can you be Jewish? If the Jews are an ethnic nation, how can you belong to that ethnic nation?
For the same way that American Indian nations would sometimes adopt outsiders, but they can only adopt a very tiny number, and the adoptees can only thrive if they know their place. I know my place.
I'll just say that what Luke mentioned about the Orthodox Jewish perspective here, the overwhelming majority of Jews in the United States, 70-something%, are not Orthodox. One thing I think that the anti-Semites on the right often do is conflate all of Judaism as some sort of strict Orthodox-like in-group interest, but that is a very, very bad miscalculation. Traditionally, Orthodox Jews and non-Orthodox Jews have not got along well at all. We won't even get into the history there, but it is quite a history. Mark Miller asked, why do Slavic countries are more anti-Semitism than Western European countries? What do you three think about the phenomenon of self-hating Jews? I guess they dislike Jewish history, heritage, and culture, and they see it in themselves, so they want to become something different. Somebody brought up a fellow before, Wyckoff or Witchkoff or some name like that. That sounds to me like a Russian Jewish name. I wouldn't be surprised if that fellow who said something bad about the Masons and Protestantism wouldn't shock me if he were, say, a Russian Jewish convert to Christianity of some kind, maybe Roman Catholicism, maybe Orthodoxy. And you often see that among a lot of self-hating Jews. They join these denominations of Christianity that are very much not just like New Testament stuff, but they have their own alternate culture.
Self-hating Jews, I think it's a slur. It just means that certain Jews have priorities that are higher than their loyalty to Jews. Pass.
Paul?
Yeah, I think the word self-hating Jew is not only a slur to Jews who have other loyalties that they consider higher than their Jewish identity. It's generally a slur used against Jews on the right. That if they were really good Jews, then they would be behind, I don't know, Bernie or somebody on the left, or Klobuchar. Even if they were Zionists, self-hating Jews are Jews who I remember being told this. By a Jewish colleague when I was teaching at Rockford College, and he asked me whom I was supporting in a presidential election, and I said I voted for Nixon. He said that, yes, there are self-hating Jews. The definition of a self-hating Jew is a Jew is a Republican. So to me, this particular slur is used either by Jews on the left, who expect all Jews to be on the left and to be anti-Christian, or else Jews who are sort of hyper-Zionist and don't like you because you're not as Zionist as they are, or you're not as monomaniacal in your support of Zionism as they are. But in any case, I simply find the word self-hating Jew to be usually an invidious slur that means that the person who's using it doesn't happen to agree with you.
Manic Street asks, do you think that the increase of the Muslim population of France will lead to pogroms? It very well might eventually. I think it depends on how much longer this immigration trend persists for, but it's a terribly, terribly destructive situation, to say the least.
Right, and it depends a great deal on the ability of the majority to control this restive minority. It also depends in part on the behavior of Israel. If Jews are going to rejoice that Israel is the Jewish state, then every single thing that the Jewish state does is going to have repercussions for Jews around the world. Us.
Paul, anything to add?
Yeah, I find it a sad commentary on Jewish political behavior that Jews in Germany attack Germans as anti-Semites if they want to control the Muslim flood into the country. The Zentralrat für Juden in Deutschland will do this all the time. Any politician who says we have enough, or they'll even attack Jews who say we have enough, and they're attacking us on the street. And I think in France, Jewish organization, what is it, the Alliance Israélite, came very, very late to the conclusion that it might be in the interest of Jews in France to stop the North African Muslim immigration into the country. I think their alliance with the left has become absolutely pernicious, even in terms of Jewish interests.
What does Paul think of the Bolsheviks that happen to be Jews that advocated the destruction of traditional Jewish life.
There were Bolsheviks who went after, traditional Jewish village life, which they thought was sort of a reactionary force in which they wanted to destroy. But most of the Jewish Bolsheviks were primarily anti-Christian. They went after the Orthodox Church, which had persecuted Jews or supported the persecution of Jews in the past. I certainly know that Trotsky fought against the Bundists, who were sort of the Yiddish-speaking socialist communitarians in Russia, and he also went after Zionists. Of course, the Zionists, they were lucky, just left the country. But I think the main target of religious bigotry on the part of Jewish Bolsheviks was the Orthodox Church, which they worked very hard to destroy. And one can understand this in terms of the very bitter relations that Jews had to the state religion, which had generally been anti-Semitic.
Yeah, it's sad and pathetic that Christians had it much worse under the Soviet Union than Jews did, and yet virtually every synagogue around the world was putting up placards, "Free Soviet Jews," and Christian churches around the world were basically indifferent to the fate of millions and millions of Christians in the Soviet Union. So today we have Christians being genocided in the Middle East, we have Christians being tortured and raped, and yet Christian churches in the United States and in Europe are completely indifferent to the suffering of their fellow Christians, while if Jews suffered, 1/100th of what Christians are going through in the Middle East, Jews would be out marching in the streets, putting up placards, writing op-eds.